So throughout high school, I didn't have any real purpose in my life. So I went to the recruiter's office behind my parents' back. I sat down and talked to him. I decided that infantry was what I wanted to do. While I was in the Marine Corps, I served 2 tours overseas. When we were in Iraq, when we were in Fallujah, I was just a saw gunner. When we got back from Iraq, I took over a first team leader position. I'm not like some combat war hero or anything like that, but the stuff that we saw and the stuff that we did over there, the way that their culture is compared to ours, and how the people are treated, and then, having to go on patrols and do different things, it gives you a whole different outlook on your life. When you get back from that, a lot of people are messed up mentally. They're not sure how to handle these things, and I wasn't either. So some of my friends committed suicide. Some of them attempted to commit suicide. You're a Marine, you're supposed to be tough, deal with it. And then when you get out, you're just, not only do I have to process back into the civilian world, but I'm trying to process all these emotions and all these different things that I dealt with while I was overseas. So, it's a lot to deal with. So when I got out in 2010, I was drinking heavily, using drugs, trying to find ways to deal with things that I didn't know how to deal with, and the easiest way to do that was to go get drunk. That's the worst thing you could ever do, is just try to push it away, and then, next thing you know, it all overflows and you don't know how to deal with that either. So ended up, getting into a huge bar fight. And I went back to try to get my buddy to leave, and the cops showed up, and I was arrested. And eventually when I got out, I went through the whole process of being, tried and getting sentenced to 5 months in jail. Me and my little brother actually had it falling apart. He had a rough go at it with my mom. My mom was a heavy drinker, so that led him into the wrong group of friends. And he ended up, he was murdered in Detroit. My whole family, we've just been surrounded by tragedy, it seems like. And I was mad about it. I was mad at God. I didn't understand, what all this meant, and I didn't understand how to process it. And everything just piled on, and it was just like all these different events that had happened in my life. It all came to this one breaking point. And I was hungover, driving to work, and it was dark. It was like 4 a.m. My hands were going numb. I was like really short of breath, and it just all collapsed on me. I felt like I was having a heart attack, and I had no idea what it was. They ended up calling an ambulance and having them come and pick me up, and that's when they told me that I had a severe panic attack. That was when I realized that maybe I should have processed all that information, all that stuff that I'd been dealing with my whole life, that I just kept putting to the back. I couldn't work for the next week after that. I was literally stuck in my house in like the worst state of depression. I was continuously crying, and I'm a big tough guy. Like, I don't cry, My wife was like, hey, maybe we should try to do something. Maybe you should go to therapy. So I started going to therapy, and she was like, well, do you ever think about going to church? And I'm like, I'm not that person, I'm past that. God, I didn't feel like God would accept me, all the stuff that I'd done in my life. We were actually driving down 75, and there's that big You Matter sign outside of the Perrysburg campus. And she was like, we should look up that church. So she looks it up and sees all the reviews on it. We decided that we would go, and the first time that we went, it was crazy. It was like I was just sucked in. All my anxiety was gone. And my wife and I got into the car, and we started kind of debriefing, the service and what we thought about it. And we both felt the same way. So at that point, I knew I wanted to continue to go. We'd heard about the groups, and I didn't really pay much attention. I wasn't really thinking about it. I figured it was Bible study stuff, and that's just not, where I was in my life at that point. She said there was a basketball group, and I was like, yeah, right. These bunch of church dudes aren't playing basketball, And she was like, well, I'll sign you up and just go try it out and see. So I was pretty nervous going out there. I met Casey and some of the other guys, and we introduced ourselves and what campus we went to, and said a prayer, and then we played basketball for a couple hours, and it was awesome. And Casey made it a point to talk to me, and I'm starting to believe. So once that happens, and he makes it an effort to talk to me and actually figure out where I am in my faith and in my life, I started putting myself out there. So my wife and I did growth track. The whole breakdown, everything was pretty much surrounded by leadership. I ended up starting this past semester in the fall with the high school kids and the junior high kids. I feel like serving it's given me a purpose. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Seeing these young kids and the struggles that they go through, to be able to sit down and talk to them and let them know that God cares about them, that they matter. I was notorious for letting things beat me up mentally, just continuing to keep me down and just dwelling on it, allowing God to be in my life. I found that it's a miserable way to live. There's nothing fun about making everybody's life horrible because you're in a bad mood. I find myself being happy way more often now, and not letting things, take me down and keep me down. I find myself praying sometimes 10, 20 times a day. I still struggle with the anxiety, and anytime I start feeling like, my brain's just gonna shut down, I pray. When I wake up in the morning now, instead of getting on my phone and messing around with Facebook, the first thing I do is I pray. Pray, for the strength and guidance throughout my day. And then throughout my day, if I start struggling, I'll pray again. Through Cedar Creek, I've found my faith again. I've opened my heart to God, and I've let Him in. And I still struggle with things. By no means is this like some perfect life. And God says that, nothing's going to be perfect. But, if you believe in Him and you trust in Him, then you can live a happy life and a good life.